Okay, guys, so what I want to explain now, I want to explain a little bit more of the structured product stuff that I discussed in class. Okay, so I will talk about synthetic structured products. Okay, and all right, so I will use this. Okay, so what is the idea behind synthetic structured products? So the first thing we want to discuss is IndexEDX. So in a index CDX, okay, it's just like a usual CDX, but here instead of having one name that you protect a bunch of names. So in this case, let's say you have $100 million pool. Each $100 million will have 100 names. And these 100 names, each one will have a principal of $1 million. So this can be AT&T, this can be IBM, this can be ExxonMobil, this Verizon, etc., etc., etc. All are companies, okay? And each of those companies will be $1 million. Now let's say there's a coupon that the buyer pays is going to be 200 basis points. So on a $100 million pool, he's going to pay 200 basis points, it's 2% per annum. Okay, it is going to be $2 million. All right? So now, if one name defaults, let's say AT&T defaults, okay, you guys as a seller, okay, will pay $600,000. Why would you pay $600,000? It's the same formula, 1 minus recovery times your principal. But now the principal per name. So it's 1 minus 0.4 times $1 million is going to be $600,000. Okay? So this is going to protect against, against IndexEDX. So you will have more names than one, obviously. Okay? And all these names will have equal prioritization. So no matter which name defaults first. Okay? So in this case, you have these 100 names, no matter which name defaults first, you are going to protect yourself against this default. Okay? Now, what about the synthetic structure products? Okay, so here you have the same structure of $100 million, right? You have 100 names. Okay, but now you care about chunks of capital structure. So let's say you care about the 10 to 15 chunk. So this guy, its width, right, is 5%. So you're protecting now $5 million as a seller. But this is going to be a little tricky because you are not going to protect the entire pool. You will protect just this chunk. So what you are going to care about, you are going to care about, defaults from 10 million and on. So what you have to have is first 10 million should default. Now, it is important to understand that you do not care about this first 10 million defaulting. You are not going to be liable for any dollar, okay, that is going to have the first 10 million. So the first 10 million, as we discussed in class, is around, I don't know, we said something like 15 defaults, I think. How do you get this calculation? Okay, so say for the entire pool, you have basically, you have the first 10 million, you have 10 million, now you have $600,000 for each default because it's 1 minus 0.4 times million. Okay, so it's $600,000. If you multiply by 15, so 15 multiplied by 6 is going to be 90, so give or take, okay? So, okay, so let's say, so after 15 defaults, you have $9 million gunners, another million, so another 1.5 default, give or take, okay? And then you're becoming liable, all right? So you are going to become liable only after the first 10 million will be wiped out. Now the next default, okay, let's say you are getting, the first 10 million were wiped out, the next default, then when you are going to be liable. So if the 16th or the 17th default will occur, let's say 17th default, you're going to pay $600,000. And then the pool, the 5 million pool, is going to be reduced by $600,000. So now you're going to be liable for $400,000 like this. Okay? Next one will occur, etc., etc., etc. Now, let's say that all these guys will be wiped out, so you are going to have enough defaults to wipe you out as these 5 million. What does it mean? Do you care about the further defaults? No, you don't. You just care about this chunk. Okay? These chunks are called mezzanine debt. Why they are called mezzanine? Because they are in the middle, right? You don't care about the bottom structure, you just care about some chunk in the middle. The first 0 to 10, okay, which are the most risky, they're called the equity tranche. So the equity tranche is, let's say, the 0 to 10. For investment grade, it was usually 0 to 3, but historically it actually changed. Now it's a little bit bigger, okay? Now, how do you quote this instrument, right? So if you have, let's say, let's say you have $5 million in protection, right, between 10 to 15, and let's say the buyer agrees to pay 300 basis points for protection. How much? What will the buyer pay per this 5 million? He's going to pay $150,000 per annum. So the capital structure, or the chunk of the capital structure that you care about, right? The coupon is quoted in the terms of this capital structure. Okay. Now, the good thing about this, why is it so attractive? It is attractive because it gives you more juice for your buck. As we discussed in class, you have leverage here, and we all know the power of leverage. So that's why those products became very popular prior to the 2008, prior to the 2008 crisis. Prior to the 2008 crisis, you basically, the juiciest one was here. This was basically the one that would give you the most return. Now, I'm not going to discuss hedging strategies, convexity strategies with this instrument, okay? The most important thing for me, that you guys will understand how the mechanics of this interest works. Okay? Now, what happened in the 08 crisis, okay, smart people or what we call financial engineers said, okay, we have this, thing here, right? But now instead of protecting bonds or corporate bonds, we're going to protect mortgage pools for default. So if you have a mortgage pool, okay, give or take, let's say you have 1,000 of mortgages, Okay, what they did, they chunked the pool into chunks, right? They securitized each chunk. So they basically had bonds which are backed by these chunks. They had bonds which are backed by these chunks, okay? So this was, let's say, 1,000 of mortgages. This was 10 million chunk, let's say 0 to 5, etc., etc. And the entire pool, let's say if this was 5%, the entire pool, 5% of, if is 100 million, I think it's going to be $2 billion. So the entire thing was $2 billion. But you can see that you can play the same game. Okay, so you basically protect against the default of these mortgages. Okay, so in this case you have the house. So the house goes. So if you sell protection, the house goes to your, to under your wing. Okay, and you yourself is going to protect this kind of, default. So if the zero, let's say, if the 0 to 5 chunk defaults through all these mortgages and it's $100 million, so you are going to pay, and you protected, you are going to pay $60 million in principal. And then you are going to get the bond, but you also become responsible for the house. Okay, so the ownership, okay, of the foreclosed house goes from whoever issued the bonds to whoever sold the protection. Okay, so it was a little tricky. That's why it took a little bit more time to do than the synthetic structured products, because this thing had also houses behind them, so they had to work the legal issues with the houses. But you can see that it is the same principle. The only thing here, that if you protect here your chunks of corporate structure or corporate bonds, here you are going to protect pools of mortgages. And if the mortgage defaults, you are liable. You are liable to pay, if the mortgage defaults. Okay? So basically, default is 3 months, etc., etc., etc. Now, what is important to understand, okay, that AIG did not fall because all the mortgages became defaulted. No. AIG fell because of a margin call. Because mortgages started to default, the spread of the entire pool went up, and hence the AIG was selling this. It was selling the senior protection. It got a margin call from the banks for $180 billion. And of course, they didn't have this liquidity. Okay, so they had to do what they had to do. They went to go to the Fed and basically, ask the Fed for a loan of $180 billion, which the Fed gave. All right, so that in a nutshell was a small explanation of structured products. I hope that this discussion helps you a little bit more. And I will see you in class next time. Have a great day.